I'm Marlene Byrne with the League of Women Voters of East Multnomah County, and I'd like to introduce Mark Skolnick.
Yes,
And he is the Director of Communication Services for the Multnomah Education Service District. And so please give him a welcome, and I will turn this over to him.
Thank you, Marlene. All right, well, thank you for having me over here. You know, that building across the street is one of our schools. So I've been here, and I know that this building has been here, but I've never been inside. So this is a first for me. I don't know much about the League of Women Voters, but I did look you guys up on the internet and read about the history of the League and the studies that you do and the advocacy that you do for democracy. So it made me feel good to be able to speak with you today, to know that that's the kind of work you do, and we're happy to talk with you. Again, my name is Mark Skolnick. I'm the Director of Communication Services for Multnomah ESD. And you probably want to know who the heck I am, a little bit about me. I've lived in Portland, or in Oregon, since 1979. I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, where it's awfully cold. And my folks moved to Connecticut when I was in high school. So I went to high school and college in Connecticut. I'm a UConn graduate, not UConn with a Y, but UConn with a U. C-O-N-N, and then I came out here in 1979. So what is that, 32 years. I have a wife and two lovely daughters. My older daughter is 23, and fingers crossed she'll graduate Portland State this year. At least that's what she tells us. My younger daughter is a junior at Westland High School. She is adopted from China, and she will be 17 in June. And my wife works for the Providence Health System. She works for the Women and Children's Program at Providence and has been there for about 25 years. So that's who I am. So I'm pretty invested in this area. This is home for me. I've lived here a lot longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life. So Multnomah County and Oregon are my home. So I'm glad to talk with you a little bit about MESD today, and I'm going to call it MESD because it rolls off the tongue a little easier than Multnomah Education Service District. So MESD. And I thought that I could give you a talking annual report, but I don't want to do that because that's boring. It would have a lot of facts and information, but it would bore me and it would bore you. So I thought what I would do is just kind of take you through a day in the life of what it's like for our staff who work there. And I think that will give you a better picture, hopefully a better picture, of what it's like for our people. So that is a beautiful view of Mount Hood from my driveway. Every once in a while when the clouds part, you can actually see the mountain there. So I took that because we are also over here, probably in view of Mount Hood quite a bit. So I'm here representing the 650 staff members who work for MESD, 650 of us. Out of the 650, about 500 of us are in an instructional or classroom setting every single day. So most folks think of NESD as a regional organization, one that does school improvement and works with curriculum, but actually that's a very, very, very small part of what we do. We're primarily a direct service agency, and we work with kids every day. So I always want to let you know that of the 650 folks, basically when the day starts, they are fanning out to, at any given day, 150 to 200 locations throughout the county, and I'll try to give you a little flavor of that. It worked. So 6 a.m., that's awful early. I think I'm still in bed at 6 a.m., and hopefully you are too, but we probably, at our building, which is down by the airport on Ainsworth Circle, and that's kind of our main building, although only about 1/6 of our people would go there on a given day. But early in the morning, you'd find our technology people arriving. Why are they arriving so early? We provide what's called the wide area network. So everything that connects schools to the internet up to the front door of the school, we maintain all that. It's called the WAN, the wide area network. Interestingly, these networks can get hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of spam and virus hits a day on the network. So we manage that network, and this is a good example of what an ESD does. It's like a cooperative, and we collaborate with all the other districts in Multnomah County to do a couple of things. One, to reduce the staffing that it takes to run technology for all districts, and two, to reduce the cost. We have one of the best per megabyte charges because we are tied into what's called the Ernie iNet system, which is a countywide system that many, many users share. So we are actually the biggest, our consortium of schools is the biggest consumer of technology in the whole area. We also would find our printing and graphics team, and up in the right corner we have a full service print shop. This is something we've done for years. We only have 4.2 people working there. We have a graphic artist, a press operator, a supervisor, and a bindery technician. But we do printing for the schools, we have a digital press, we have a very unique capability. We also provide printing and graphic services for our internal customers, as well as about 75 nonprofit and community organizations. So if you happen to be in a neighborhood association or a community association that needs some printing done, we work for all kinds of folks like that too. And then this gal right here, Karen Finch, she works in our technology area. She interprets student data for the districts and helps them understand how grades and demographic data affects how they might teach. And then last but not least, the folks in our co-op purchasing team will probably be arriving pretty early in the morning. We rent a warehouse down on Airport Way, and we have customers throughout the state, and it's really probably the essence of what a co-op does. We pool money to buy things in bulk to drive down the prices. Interesting story about the cooperative purchasing. Many people associate that with ESDs. It's actually a fairly small program right now. You know, companies like Staples and Office Depot, you can get almost the same price and get it on demand. So that's a model. It's probably going to have to change, but we still operate the co-op purchasing warehouse. 6:30 a.m. Time to wake up. Right today, let's just say it's Tuesday. It's April 12th, right? So this morning, probably about 6:30 in the morning, in 5 sites throughout Multnomah County and Clackamas County, where we run outdoor school. And people know about outdoor school. They may not know that MESD provides outdoor school. But outdoor school is in its 46th year. At any one of these sites, you're going to have about 120 to 140 sixth graders who are coming from all different schools. So we would pair up students from, let's say, Gordon Oliver and Selwood Middle School. So we mix kids from different areas of the community. They come, they live in a natural science camp for a week. And what's amazing about the outdoor school is that they are taught by high school students. And that's really the heart and soul of the program. So at any given site, let's just take Numano, Camp Numano, which is owned by Kiwanis. I think they probably still have some snow up there. It's up by Mount Hood. So this morning, 120 to 140 kind of grumpy kids who really don't know each other are waking up with their student leaders. They're going to have breakfast and they're getting ready for their field study. So it's a science camp that's extremely, extremely popular. People love outdoor school. Today's Tuesday. What they say usually about outdoor school is by Wednesday, kids get to begin to feel a little bit comfortable. It's a week-long program. So students begin to feel really comfortable on Wednesday, and we'll talk a little bit more about outdoor school in just a minute. Let me just mention that we have about 7,000 sixth graders that go through outdoor school each year, about 1,400 of the high school student leaders, and then we also contract with many parochial schools, private schools, and we provide some sort of environmental education experience for them as well. We do that on contract. 7 o'clock. You know, probably when we were growing up, because we're all about the same age here, right? Probably when we were growing up, I don't remember personally that there were students in the school in which I went that had a medically fragile condition. I don't remember that. I don't remember seeing kids who were on oxygen tanks and respirators in school. I don't remember that. And maybe I didn't see them, maybe they weren't there. But the fact is today that because of the federal law IDEA, which guarantees the least restrictive environment for students with disabilities in a public school, we have children who have extreme disabilities who are in our public schools. At MESD, we provide somewhere around 30, I think it's 32, one-to-one nurses who work with young children every single day. And the reason I wrote up there they're riding the buses is this gal right here, Stephanie Gonzalez, gets up probably 6 o'clock and she goes over and she gets picked up by a school bus in North Clackamas School District. So that's not even in Multnomah County, but they contract with us. And she gets on that bus and she picks up this little guy, Ryan. And Ryan is, let's see, I met him last year. I think he's probably about 11 years old now. And Ryan is an amazing young man who has fought through incredible physical challenges in his life. And Stephanie is a nurse, and she spends 7 or 8 hours a day with Ryan. Ryan's life depends on Stephanie every single day, and that scene is repeated with about 32 other kids throughout the county. Up here, this gal, it's kind of hard to see, but that's Monique Bouval, the nurse, and her name is Riley, and she's from the Park Rose School District. Riley, when her mother was pregnant with Riley, she had a car accident. And before Riley was born, they were very worried whether she would survive. But when she was born, she had, again, numerous problems. You can see that there's a respirator on her throat there. And in order for her to go to school, she's got to be with a nurse 8 hours a day. And that nurse works for us. So this is where your heart comes in. It's not just about what you think of a normal classroom. These are kids that we work with that have extreme challenging disabilities. Over on the right is Charlie Dwyer. And Charlie, this picture was taken at Gresham High School. And this young man who he works with, believe it or not, is 17 years old, Eric. He is, it's amazing to watch Charlie and Eric together because Charlie's been with him since he was about 12. And Charlie's a nurse, started out at Emmanuel and as a pediatric nurse and did some substituting. And as he said, I just fell in love with Eric. That's what he said. And he takes care of Eric every day and has been with him forever. So those are three of the folks that we're proud of, Stephanie and Monique and Charlie. We also provide the school nurses that work in Multnomah County Schools. So if you see a nurse in the hallway of Woodlawn Elementary, the chances are she's an MESD employee. They have an itinerary each week where they go to maybe 2 or 3 elementary schools. Generally in high schools, they just have one nurse, but sometimes they split them. So we've got about 85 school nurses. And they fan out all over the region. Sometimes they work in more than one school in one day. This gal here, Tammy, many of our nurses do more than just what we think of. Kids have an accident at the playground, or maybe they need to get some aspirin, or they got to call mom and say, can you pick Joey up today because he's not feeling good. The nurses are involved in all kinds of things that go well beyond just the maintenance of health, and they go on for health prevention. This gal, Tammy Cardozo, this was taken at a Gresham school, and I'm not sure if it was Kelly Creek or Deep Creek. But these are all kids that were having ADD, so they were having attention deficit issues, hard to handle in class, got really antsy, and so she took a seminar on yoga and went and started a program in that school called Yoga Calm. And she gets kids, they love it. I went to the class, took my shoes off, did the yoga with all the kids, and these are kids who can't wait to get in there with Tammy, and she showed them all these self-relaxation techniques. So she took this all on her own, got a grant to do it, and does it on her own time. This gal at the bottom, Sarah Lustman, works at Centennial Middle School, and up at the top right corner is Lisa Stemper. And those two young men with Lisa, she's the school nurse at Laurelhurst Elementary in Portland. Those two young men have type 1 diabetes. It is the fastest growing childhood disease in the country, and it's also one of the fastest growing for people like us, not with type 2 diabetes. But these young guys come in, and right before lunch, they check in with Lisa, and she educates them on food. They check their glucose. They talk about what they're going to get for lunch. They do a lot of math. Why do they do math? They're counting carbs, because literally their health depends on what they're intaking in terms of their sugar intake. So it's just an example. These would be 3 examples of nurses who don't do what we normally think, in addition to what we normally think of a nurse doing, they really take care of kids in terms of health education and health prevention. And we have about 80 to 85 school nurses. Okay, so we're only up to 8 o'clock. I better hurry up here. 8 o'clock, students are getting ready to go to school. And we actually run several schools. Okay, so right across the street is Alpha School. But if we start as far east as we can go, do you guys know where Edgefield is? You know where Edgefield is, right? Out in Troutdale. Well, that used to be the county poor farm, right? And it was, I don't know, about 80 acres or something like that. Well, just to the west of where McMiniman's Edgefield is something called the Edgefield Children's Campus. And we built a building on that children's campus along with Reynolds School District and the Morrison Center. And we call that Errata Creek School. And every day at Errata Creek School, and that's a picture up on the right, that's Pam Pestalozzi, who's the school nurse at Errata Creek. We have about 50 youngsters, elementary to high school, who have been unsuccessful, let's say, in their normal school environment. And it's not because they are dumb, And it's not because they have a physical disability, but these are students with such severe social and emotional disabilities that basically they've been kicked out, to put it in bluntly, kicked out of the other schools they've been in. So it's a very structured environment. It's really the last resort before some of these young kids go into maybe a psychiatric model or a day treatment program. But this is a school. The goal of this school is to provide a highly structured environment where kids can be successful with small classes and get them back into their regular school. You know, it's amazing. You go in there and you see kids 7, 8 years old, and you think, how could that be? How mad could they get? How emotionally upset could they get? But for whatever reason, we have very young kids who need, for whatever reason, whether it's organic or environmental, they need a lot of structure to be successful in school. So we run a Rattle Creek School, and that's way out there at the children's campus. Coming back in, we run Pathways Community School, which is down not very far from here. It's about 1 block over and 2 blocks down. And that's a school for students with multiple disabilities that are 17 to 21. And you heard me right. We actually take care of kids until they're 21 if they have a disability. That's, again, the IDEA that requires us to do that. And those are students who are post-secondary. They're older than high school age. And the whole purpose of that school is to get them out in the community. We've got arrangements with Kmart and a lot of stores in the area, and they work at those stores and they get life skills. But trust me, they would, at age 18, they would not probably be ready to go out on their own. Many of them are in foster care. So we run Pathways Community School. Alpha across the street. Alpha is a very traditional alternative school. Again, are the kids dumb? No, but it's like a square peg in a round hole. They are not, if you send them back to Barlow High School, good as it is, or Gresham High School, they're generally so credit deficient and they're not going to finish. So the alternative is to come to Alpha. It's one of many things that the community offers for kids. Again, for some kids, regular school, they can handle it. It works really well. For other kids, it's just not going to work. We also run Helensview School, which is on right on the other side of 205, on the west side of 205 along Killingsworth. There's a little street called Sumner, and we rent that school from Park Rose. It wasn't called, I think it was called Sumner School. We renamed it Helensview because it's got a beautiful view of Mount St. Helens. And every day at Helensview, we have about 200 and 225 young people come from middle school through about age 19. And many of these, first of all, a lot of them are teen parents, so we have a daycare center there. Or they're students who are gang involved. And again, the common thread is that they are often so credit deficient, they've been out of school for a couple years, often they're struggling to survive economically. They are not living at home. Who knows who they're living with. Some of them are homeless, some are living with extended family, some are living with their parents. But that school focuses on getting them through high school, getting them into basically community college, and it's been really successful. On the right there, the gentleman with the 2 students is George Weatheroy, and George is a detective for the Portland Public Schools. And George comes in to Helensview every couple weeks and runs groups with young men and young women. You know, and here we have a situation, we've got kids that have criminal records, have been in gangs, and yet this guy comes in and he tries to bridge the gap between their stereotypes of kids and the kids' stereotypes of the police. So it's really good. So George is a great guy. We wrote an article on him just recently. 9 o'clock. Well, we have a lot of special instructional programs. And these programs here are all grant-funded programs. The hospital school. If you go to Legacy, we've got kids, it's a children's hospital, right? I mean, it specializes in children. I know they do other stuff, but they have a big emphasis on kids. Well, if a kid is fighting cancer or leukemia or a life-threatening disease, they still have to get some education. And we, with a grant from the State Department of Education, we provide all the instruction in, I'm going to forget this, the Oregon State Hospital, Legacy, and I know there's another couple hospitals that we work in. This young man in this picture, Robert, when I went and talked to him and our 2 staff members there, Julie and Annabelle, this young man was a sophomore at Aloha High School. And very active, healthy, physical, great artist. And one day he wakes up and he can't move his arms. And by a couple hours go by, and he can't move at all. And what the heck happened here? So this kid goes to the hospital, goes to the Legacy, and he's diagnosed with a unbelievably rare spinal fluid infection that happens like 1 out of 10 million people. His life and his family life changed overnight. When I met him, he was just getting the use of his hands back, and he was just starting to walk. So it is a condition for Robert, which hopefully is temporary, but he's a smart kid, and while he's at Legacy, he needs to get education. So we provide all the teachers and the educational assistants that work in the hospitals. We also run Winwat School. Do you guys know Albertina Kerr? It's a social service agency, and they've got that old building down in Portland. Well, they also own on 162nd, they own a campus there, and it's called the Winwat School, and it's historic. There's a big tree in the front. The tree's got to be from Columbus. I mean, it's gigantic. These are students who are, some of them who live on campus. They have a sexual predator designation. Some of them are very high acting out students who have been involved in multiple runaways in the criminal justice system, and they often live in what they call Proctor Homes, which is it's like a foster home on steroids. It's a very structured foster home, and people have to be specially trained to take care of these kids, and these are teenagers. So we provide the education in that school. So we don't run the social service part, we don't run the psychiatric part, we don't do anything with the criminal justice system, but we provide the teachers, again, because these kids have to be educated. Alternative pathways. This is a picture that I took at Portland Community College last year. We're funded, we're in, I think, our 6th or 7th year funded from the federal government to help first generation college students go to college. What a first generation, am I saying that right? Students who would be the first one in their families to ever attend college. And we work with about 600 of them from all the high schools, and we provide them with hands-on help to get the credits they need, take the tests they need, be able to apply to school, be able to understand what their vocational and educational interests are. And we did a big event at PCC to take them through the college environment and see what it was like. And often that is what just getting them there to picture themselves at college is enough to get them to go to college. We also provide services with a migrant education grant, and those staff up there are the staff that the grant pays for, and they work with students from migrant families, mostly out in East County. And we also provide instruction for incarcerated youth that are in adult facilities like Inverness, and they are designated as having a disability. So they have what they call an IEP, an individual education plan. And again, we provide the education. Forget all the details. What's the take-home message on this? Is that these are specialized programs that are often regional in nature. In other words, they don't just draw kids from one school district or another. In fact, the hospital program, we've had kids from out of the country. We've got tons of kids from Washington, kids from all through Oregon. So the common thread is that we're geared up and we know how to deliver education in a whole bunch of environments that you wouldn't normally think education is delivered in. Probably about half of what we do is special education, and that takes place in all kinds of environments. FLS stands for Functional Living Skills. If a student has a reading disability or a minor disability, the chances are that the school district themselves can accommodate them. And so we wouldn't be working with those kids. The kids that are enrolled in our Functional Living Skills classrooms that are often located in district buildings are students like this young man over there in the wheelchair. Not ambulatory, maybe not verbal, but absolutely do they deserve a right to be educated? Do they deserve a right to be treated with respect? Absolutely. And so we educate them at pathways and in classrooms throughout the community. Actually, our biggest program in special education is for very young students, students birth to 5. We're funded with about a $14 million grant from the State Department of Education. It's mostly federal dollars. And we work with about 2,000 children and their families during the course of the year. So these are young children, birth to 5, not yet even in kindergarten, who have been diagnosed with autism, learning disabilities that are, and motor skill disabilities that are pretty profound, hearing loss, vision loss, you name it. All the kinds of things that as a parent you shudder when you think about your own children getting. But the fact is that when someone, you know what it's like, you have children and you're picturing T-ball, and you're picturing Little League, and you're picturing soccer team, and you're picturing prom, and you're picturing college, and you're picturing driving. And often for a parent whose child is diagnosed with something like autism, their world is going to fall apart a little bit. And where do they turn? These services are free. We have about 200 folks that work in this. Early childhood teachers, educational assistants, physical therapists, occupational therapists, behavior specialists, assistive technology specialists, autism specialists. And it's all free, and we, as I said, we serve about 2,000 families throughout the community. IKEA, you know the big IKEA over there by the airport, they have been great. They like our program so much that they opened up, they have a daycare center at IKEA. And they have been sponsoring with us a positive parenting series. So our staff actually goes over to IKEA once every couple of months throughout this whole school year. They've done programs for parents, they've done developmental screening, and IKEA thinks this program is, the manager told us, the best thing she's done in the 18 years she's worked for IKEA, just in terms of a community program. So we're really proud of that. We also try to serve kids as much as possible in community preschools. We don't isolate kids who have a disability in a classroom. They are in classrooms with their normally developing peers. What better way for them to model the kind of developmental skills that we hope they will have than to be in a classroom with their normally developing peers? So we call it natural environments. We also send those staff to homes. A couple of years ago, I called up one of our early intervention specialists. Her name is Kristen Erickson White. And I said, I'd like to follow you around one morning and see what you do. So she said, okay, meet me over here at 92nd and Burnside. I'm going to go to a foster home. And there's very small children there. So I met her there. No photographs because these kids are all in foster care. The woman there had 4 babies. I think the oldest was about 1. And 2 of them were just coming out of a drug-induced, well, you know what fetal alcohol syndrome is. This would be, I guess, the drug equivalent of a fetal alcohol syndrome. So in other words, this little 3-month-old, his mom was so doped up that he got all the effects in utero and was born basically addicted to drugs. Obviously, the child was taken away from the mom. So we have a network of foster care parents that take care of these kids until they can get better and be adopted. We walked into the house, and Kristen worked with the mom and the kids, and this is a foster mom. She incorporates all kinds of physical therapy and assessment stuff, talks to the mom about what she's doing, how the kids are progressing. And it was really interesting because on her wall, you know how we often have our family pictures on her wall. Well, she had pictures of, I think, about 35 of these kids that over the years she had taken care of. And she pointed to every one of them because I said, well, what are all these pictures? And she pointed, and she just told me the story about every single one of these kids. So when I say we're in 200 locations in a day, and some of them are not where you think you'd find teachers and people, this is where our folks are. Okay, I'm going to get you through the day here. Back at the Mothership. And the Mothership is the building that we own out at Ainsworth Circle. And we built that building in the late 80s when we got a big, fat rebate check from the county. The county had withheld taxes from a number of taxing districts. And the districts all got together and said, you can't do that. And it took about 4 years, and MESD got about $4 or $5 million in a lump sum of taxes. And we used to rent the old Russellville School on 102nd Burnside. It was like 101 uses of duct tape everywhere, holding things together. So they took this windfall and they built the building out at Ainsworth. We own it free and clear. And this was before Airport Way really got developed. So the building is, I think it's worth $19 million or something right now. It's what a deal for the taxpayers. So back at the Mothership, we do some things that don't necessarily involve kids every day. We do a lot of work with teachers and educators on school improvement. So we're hired by the state, and we get grants to provide literacy training for teachers, to provide training on how to do math, teach math to meet the new teaching standards. We also have a program that does assessment services. So now we have high stakes testing in Oregon, unlike a lot of other states. When we were in school, I took an SAT, But I don't ever remember having to take a state assessment that gave me a benchmark and said you're either meeting or below meeting or above meeting, but they have all that now. So just during spring break, we had this group come. We had about 40 teachers come, and they all brought their laptops, and they scored math and writing papers for the state, and there was something like 22,000 of these papers to be scored. Well, somebody's got to score them. These are writing samples, so it's not like you can feed it into a computer. So we do a lot of that on a contract with the state. Let's say we're through half our day, and a lot of what we do is work with community partners. 5 years ago, we were the only educational agency in the country to get what they call a wraparound grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. It comes from the U.S. Health and Human Services, HHS. And this group right over here, those folks there, they're in the last year of this grant. And what they have done is they have provided system change in the mental health system for children birth to 8. Now, why would you need that? There's a judge in Multnomah County whose name is Nan Waller, and I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to hear her speak. She's really eloquent, really a beautiful speaker, and she does family court. And she was seeing kids come back to her classroom, come back to her courtroom over and over again. And the same questions were asked, and she saw all these silos. This agency doesn't know what the other agency is doing, and they're working with the kid, but meanwhile the school has no idea who's working with the kid. So with Nan Waller and a group of folks, we applied for this grant, and it is focused on improving the mental health system in a wraparound, I mean that's the metaphor, wraparound for kids birth to 8. This gal here, do you know who she is? That is Margaret Carter, and she was a state senator from Northeast Portland. Now I think she works for the state. But we took a whole bunch of kids down there on National Children's Mental Health Day, which is on the first week of May every year. We've gone down to the Capitol. It's an educational process for these kids. We help, these kids are involved with their peers to help reduce stigma against kids with mental health issues. So we've done that, and this was a great day. We took all the kids down to the Capitol. It was really cool. Okay, we're in the afternoon, and I mentioned that we're the only ESD in the state that provides school health services. And I have to brag a little bit. As I said, we have about 85 nurses that work in the schools. We have about 30 some odd nurses that work with one-to-one care for kids. But we have a huge amount of infrastructure that we've built because our system is so good. Our system of school health services, our manual was adopted by the National Association as the national model. So these folks really know what they're doing. So in addition to the school nurses, we have created all these support services that help kids stay healthy. We have an expanded health screening team so that kids get scoliosis, vision, hearing, all kinds of screenings in 1st, 3rd, and 5th grade, I believe. We work with the Medical Teams International to bring their dental van. So that picture up there was taken in the parking lot at Alder School. And the dentists volunteer their time, and our nurses do all the coordination. So they identify the kids, they get the permission from the parents. These kids are uninsured. They get transportation if it's needed. They get them lunch. They get translators, if I didn't already say that. And we're not talking about cleaning your teeth. We're talking about kids who have abscesses and need root canals. I mean, kids who feel like they've got a hammer inside their head trying to get out. That's how bad their teeth hurt. Kids with no insurance. So we bring the dental van at what used to be called Binsmead. It's not Binsmead, it's called Harrison Park. It's a K-8 school now, and it's just off Division between 82nd and 92nd. And at Harrison Park, one of our school nurses took it on herself to give kids backpacks full of food for the weekend. Her husband happens to work at Nike. She got Nike to give a big donation. She happens to know Tim Boyle from Columbia. He donated all of the backpacks. What she found was that kids came to school on Monday, and what they say, they didn't get enough to eat on the weekend. So she just took it on herself to get all these donations and put this backpack program at Harrison Park. We also have a partnership with Kaiser and the Oregon Health Plan to identify children who need health insurance. And we have identified now half of the kids in Multnomah County are receiving some sort of subsidized health insurance. And our staff, we have 2 outreach workers funded by Kaiser to identify kids. We do all kinds of training, BPP, bloodborne pathogen first aid training. We do the hearing program, and we also track all the immunizations. So when you hear that it's exclusion day in February and kids can't come to school because they don't have their immunizations, our folks are the ones who are tracking all that and alerting the families. That's a really popular job. How would you like to call a family and say, don't come to school tomorrow until you get your shots? We also do a lot of adding resources to the school base that they couldn't afford on their own. These folks here are the folks that provide the Medicaid administrative claiming. What the heck is that? How can I explain this? If a physical therapist is delivering what they call a Medicaid eligible health service to a kid, we can charge Medicaid for it for that amount of time. If a school secretary arranges transportation for a kid with a disability, we can help the school claim that time from Medicaid. Last year, we generated over $24 million in what they call Medicaid administrative claiming, not just for schools, but for health departments, the entire state of Alaska, and health departments all through Oregon, because we developed this software system that's called MetaSync, and it's really good, and it really works, and it saves time. So these are just some of the things that we do to generate funds for the districts. We get money through Senate Bill 1149 for energy efficiency, and we hold that in trust for the districts. We also have a Reconnecting Youth project that we're doing basically free for the districts, bringing kids back in to school who haven't been in school for a while. We're back in the woods at 3 o'clock. And probably if we were to go out there today at 3 o'clock, we'd find kids at one of our outdoor school sites, and they'd be studying either soil, water, plants, or animals. This picture I took at, it's the Baptist camp in Clackamas County, Milk Creek, I think it's called Milk Creek. And the kids are capturing critters, and they take them back, and the high school students help them look at the critters and identify them scientifically, and it's all part of their week at outdoor school. Meanwhile, back in the Assistive Technology Lab, this gal right here, Pam Pestalozzi, is a former speech pathologist, but she got interested in how to use assistive technology for kids who have communication problems. I'll give you an example. They know that a student can communicate, but he's nonverbal. He or she is nonverbal. We know that they can express wants or needs because you can give them some food and they don't want it, they'll turn their head away. But they can't say, I don't want that, or I'd rather have the pancake than the eggs. And how do they communicate this? So Pam and her partner Ronnie Sauter have developed all these unusual ways for kids to communicate using technology. They put a pad on their wheelchair with a joystick, and they can get them to work the pad to say, I'm hungry, or I want to take a nap now, or my brother is Paul, or I really am happy to see my mom today. So they give all these little messages. It's fascinating. And these folks are almost tinkerers, they're almost inventors, and they do this every day for kids. And it's all our folks too, it's all our people. We're getting late in the day, probably the schools are shutting down, but we have a lot of stakeholder meetings. For every one of our programs, we have advisory committees that come from people from the school districts. So we're not doing this in isolation. The school districts who use our services and buy services from us will let us know if something that we're offering is useful to them or it needs to be changed. So if they don't want it and they don't want to buy it, we don't offer it. So we have advisory committees. We're well represented in a number of community forums, the whole school safety thing. You know, after 9/11 and Columbine and everything like that, there's a big emphasis on school safety, on coordinated emergency response. So we're part of all that. And we've just kicked off what we're calling the Shared Services Cooperative, in which us and 4 other ESDs basically want to eliminate our ESD borders and let any district within any of those counties buy any services they want from any of the ESDs, so it's not a monopoly. And that is something that we're working on now. And then as we get to the end of the day, you all probably have served on community boards. We have an elected board. There are 7 members. It's like a school board or a community college board. There are 2 members that are at large, represent the whole of Multnomah County with a little bit of crossover into Clackamas and a little bit of crossover into Washington. 5 members who are in zones, Northeast, Far East, Mid-County, Northwest, and Southwest. And they meet every Tuesday. They're all volunteers. They're not paid. They're just like a school board. You may know, you're the former sheriff of Multnomah County is on our board now, Bernie Justo. That picture there is of Harry Ainsworth in the orange shirt. He's the current chair of the board. He's giving an award to a gal from the county library who provides what's called Raising a Reader program and distributes books through our early childhood program. Sean Schaefer is a physician for the state and he's on our board. So it's a 7-member board. They meet every Tuesday or every third Tuesday. They're a policy board, so they're elected. And tomorrow we do it all again. So I thought that would be a better way to kind of give you a flavor of what happens on a daily basis. We're not sitting in our office shuffling papers. Maybe I am, or I'm talking to you. But most of our folks are working with kids every single day in all kinds of instructional settings, and they're working with the most vulnerable, medically fragile kids who are the most at risk. So if you walk into a classroom at Grant High School, into a math class, you're not going to find our staff there. But if you walk into a health room where the nurse is, that's our nurse. If you see a student who's not ambulatory, who's getting some help with assistive technology, chances are we're working on that. So that's kind of who we are. Did you want me to keep going? I know you said 25 minutes. I probably took more than that. But that's kind of the overview. I hope that was helpful. And okay. Are we done? Questions?
How do you run your budget? Where do you get paid?
Yeah,
I heard you say grant a lot.
I'll tell you exactly how to.
These districts get paid.
Right. Okay, so Multnomah ESD in Oregon, there are 19 ESDs. There are also, by the way, 44 other states that have the same kind of system. They're not all called ESDs. In New York State, for instance, they're called a BOCES, a Board of Cooperative Educational Services. But they're all basically the same idea. They are a co-op, and we all know what a co-op is. A farmer's co-op, a food co-op, and you pool your money to provide equity, to provide access, and hopefully drive down the price. And that's essentially what the ESD system is. So how do we get our funding? So we have a tax base. So if you live in Multnomah County and you open your dreaded tax bill that they always send out right before the election, and you see Mount Hood Community College, and you see Gresham Barlow School District, and you see local police and local fire and water district, and you're also going to see Multnomah ESD there at I think about 45 cents per thousand. So that, and what that does is we generate about $26 million in local property taxes when all is said and done. All that money gets shipped to Salem. Salem then takes the state school fund, which they're talking about $5.7 billion. I can't even get my head around that number, but it's $5.7 billion. They combine it. The state school fund is made up of all the local property taxes throughout the state and the portion that the legislature allocates from the state income taxes, and it creates 5.7. Right now, ESDs then get 4.75 of that money. Okay, so the state gets 5.7 billion, and ESDs get 4.75% of that. In our case, we get about $32 million. It's about $230 per kid, something like that. And then we double that through grants and our own entrepreneurial efforts. So our budget in the current year is about $65 million. About $65 million. So about half of it, to answer your question, about half of that comes from the state school fund. About another 10 million of it is fees that we generate from the school districts that actually purchase services. And about another 20 million is from grants that we go out and get to bring services to the local area. So for every, and this is what we're trying to impress on the legislature as they're dealing with ESDs. We've told them that if you sweep away our capacity to do what we do and the way we do it now, you're probably not just going to sweep away the dollar that you save, but we conservatively estimate that we bring in about 50 cents more from outside resources because we work really well with the school districts and we know what they need. And so we're really concerned that in their rush to put more money in the classroom, which is what they think they'll do if they take money from MESD, that we're concerned about our ability to keep generating all the other revenue. If after this talk, I'm just curious, After I showed you this, if I said to you, does MESD work in the classroom with kids, would you say, oh yeah, I found out they work with kids? Why can't we get that message across? We don't seem to be able to get that message across to some legislators who are convinced that we don't work with kids, and that by eliminating or limiting the ESD system, I'm just going to talk about us, that you would put more money in the classroom. Well, we feel pretty strongly about the kids that we serve, and we're concerned about it. Early childhood, the kids, students with disabilities. So that's how we get our money. Big picture, about $65 million, about half through the state school fund, about another $20 million of that through grants, and about $10 million in fees for service. And that's about where our money comes from. Yes, my dear.
Well, if the ESD was to go away, to not be funded and so forth, then would not that cost or that responsibility come back to each local school district? I mean, isn't there a mandate to provide these services?
It's not optional. You're right, it's not optional. The federal law, they have something called maintenance of effort, where if you provide, let's just take Ryan, that little guy that Stephanie takes care of. They've got an individual education plan for Ryan, which talks about his physical needs, his educational needs. The school district cannot diminish that the following year. It's called maintenance of effort, and you have to prove that. So you're absolutely right. We don't claim students for what they call ADM, average daily membership. That's how they calculate students. I don't know why they call it membership, but they do. The ESDs do not claim students. So if we're serving Ryan, he's a student in North Clackamas School District. It is North Clackamas' responsibility to keep Ryan in school. North Clackamas happens to know that we do a really good job with nurses, so they contract with us. So yes, they have the ultimate responsibility. Money is extremely tight. And if they were to cut the ESDs like they're proposing, I think we'd make out okay because we're strong, but there's no guarantee that the money they would cut would stay in the educational system. It might go somewhere else. And if it goes somewhere else, it's less than a zero-sum game because it's really not, you're not gaining anything. I think everybody who works with us, everybody who works in our place knows that we have to try extra hard. We're like Avis. We have to try extra hard because we meet a lot of skepticism. We don't do a lot of publicity. We don't put billboards on TriMet buses. We don't put ads for enrollment. We don't sponsor NPR like Portland Community College does or Mount Hood. They're enrollment-driven institutions. We're not driven by enrollment. We work quietly. We work behind the scenes. So we're not a household name, and I don't think you'd really want your tax money being spent on that kind of promotion. We're focused on kids and families. But because we work behind the scenes, it makes us somewhat of an easy target for those who think that that they've spotted a mother lode of waste in government. And when we've been able to get legislators out to visit with us and to visit our classrooms, it works out pretty well. If they don't come out and see us, when we invite them, it's tough to really get our message across.
This purchasing responsibility that you have, you said it's possibly going to go away. Is that one of the things that the legislature is talking about?
No, they're not talking specifically about any one service or the other.
Oh.
And when I say the legislature, there's 90 members of the legislature. There's 60 in the House and 30 in the Senate. So I hate to make generalizations. There are a couple of legislators who I think, because they don't necessarily understand the breadth of what we do with kids, their hearts are in the right place. They want to put more money into the classroom. Who can argue with that? But as I described to you, we're in the classroom. We can't get any closer to kids than an educational assistant or a school nurse who spends 8 hours a day with a kid who's on a respirator. I mean, how much closer can you get to a child than that?
How much of your budget goes to this purchasing thing?
Not very much. It's a very small program. We have 4 people that work there, and they sell about $1.3 or $1.4 million in products. But as I said, things have changed for us over the time. That used to be a really smart way to do things. I'm not saying it's not smart now, but with the advent of Office Depot and Staples, it is possible for them to be very competitive with our prices. It used to be that we could just beat the socks off them in terms of prices. We were the biggest buyer of reams of paper in the state. The difference is not that much. So that's that's a program that has to pay for itself, and it has, but we're definitely looking at whether it can continue to pay for itself. Times change. You can't do the same thing you did 30 years ago. Things have changed.
I did work in one of the Gresham schools, and you know, the bulk of our purchasing was done through ESD, and simply because of the cost
Yes.
savings, and at that time, you know, it was very, very significant.
It was.
But we had to order and estimate for an entire year
And that's,
all of the
you got it.
supplies that we
Right.
were going to need. And there wasn't much money available for incidentals as the year
Right.
went on. But it was a tremendous savings in the beginning. But I can see how this other has
Yeah.
evolved, and the
On demand, you don't want to have to order everything in the beginning of the year. You want to hedge your bets. You don't want to have to purchase more than you're eventually going to need.
and the storage.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, you know, things change. That model worked really well. When I first started, I've worked there for almost 18 years. And when I first came, Gresham was a big, I don't know how much Gresham purchased last year, but I don't think it was that much. Let me just give you an idea of what Gresham purchased from, $68,666. That's not a lot. When you think about how much stuff they would purchase, we're not talking about paper, janitor supplies, athletic supplies, anything, any consumable that you can imagine. That figure was probably quite a bit a number of years ago. So it shrunk, and we can't continue to offer. And let me just also say, one of the criticisms of ESDs in the state that you might hear is that they have a monopoly, and they dictate how much you can get, when you can get it, from whom you can get it, and we'll give you stuff, and even if you don't want it, you still have to buy it. We don't operate that way, and we never have. We have what's called a menu. We'll give it to Jim Schlachter, the superintendent of Gresham, Barlow. It's got a list of everything we have with all the prices, and if he wants to buy 6 nurses, he checks off 6 nurses. If he doesn't want nurses, he doesn't have to buy it. And we've done really well that way, because that way people speak with their purchasing power. So it is like a co-op. If you don't want it, if you're in a co-op and you get enough people buying a particular kind of grain for your cows, you're going to stop buying that because there's not demand. So we've done the same thing. So we've been pretty flexible. It's been painful in some cases. You know, programs come and go. Anything else?
Well, a lot of your money comes from grants, right?
It does.
Now, so that's saving the state an awful lot of money there, getting a grant for these different programs you've talked about.
It is definitely, I don't know about saving, but I would say it adds value.
I mean, if it was something that was federally mandated, like a couple of them you mentioned that
Right.
you had gotten a grant for,
Right.
it seemed to me that
We didn't have to go after the wraparound grant. It was $9 million over 6 years. We could have just sat on our hands and said, you know what, no, it's a lot of work. But we don't operate that way, because we know that our value is in adding value. So we tried to add value that way. But what's good about us is we're big enough to have a little bit of clout. 650 people, that's pretty big, $65 million. But we're small enough to have a heart and get things done quickly. When I worked at Portland Community College years ago, and a lot of people worked there. It was like 3,000 something, and it was big, moved very slowly. We're a good size. We have the ability to respond quickly to things, so we didn't pass up the opportunity to do that. So that's really what we hang our hat on, is the added value. And we're trying to let people know that that's, you know, something we're committed to and something that we're very good at. Got a lot of really creative people there, people who don't, you know, they're energetic and they're up for a challenge. That's really what it takes, you know, people who are up for a challenge, but their heart's got to be in the right place. And it's really nice. All the folks that I work with are all the supervisors are former teachers or principals or speech paths or OTs or PTs. I mean, they have a background in direct service. They're not coming from, you know, maybe except for the business manager types and the accounting people, but the rest of them are all, you know, they're in it for the kids. So that's our orientation, and we're really focused on that, which is nice for me. It's a place you can really believe in. Quiet, it's quiet, you know, work behind the scenes, but try to do a lot of good things for kids. Anything else, you guys?
Well, I just wish that there was an easier way of getting word out to the public about all of the services that you do provide and what an important entity that ESD is. It, you know, it's not.
Yeah. You know, we've really focused on, I'm it in terms of the communication services. I'm a one-person shop. I don't have anybody helping me, and I'm happy to come talk with you. But really, you know, it's we've just tried to say to everybody there, you're an ambassador for us. Whether you're an ed assistant or you're a school secretary or you're a teacher, you're the one who the mom and dads and the foster parents come in contact with. You know, when my kids were in school, I didn't really care about the principal and the other. It was my kid, that classroom, that teacher. That's what I was closest to. That teacher represented the school to me. And if that teacher was no good, then my opinion of the school went down. If the teacher was really good, so we try to tell everybody, you know, your impression, people make their impressions from you. But our most important group are our customers. And if we were a business, we'd say that too. I think our customers value us. So we've encouraged them to speak up on our behalf this year. We'll be fine. We've been through this before. It's kind of rough. It's worrisome. You know, there are a lot of good people who work there. You know, a lot of really good people. It's a worry.
The logistics, physical, geographical logistics of a few areas in Oregon where
Yes, where they've had problems.
to weigh against
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
to be efficient. And,
Yeah.
and that's based on geography, and it doesn't apply all
Yeah.
across the state.
Yeah, I think we've got good working relationships with the districts. There's 8 of them, and we have a bunch of other customers who work really hard because they're not happy with you. You're sunk. It's just like a business. If your customers don't want you, then it doesn't really matter. All the window dressing and all the fancy talk doesn't matter. It matters what happens with kids, and I think we've got a pretty good shop. Okay, thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, and you've really opened our eyes to MESD and
Thank you.
all that you do.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the work that you guys do too.